There's a famous graph of the public acceptance of cordon pricing in Stockholm, Sweden, where there's a strong public opposition before implementation, and then a rapid shift to public support in the months after. In planning, we often talk about this dynamic as if it's specific to congestion pricing, and I will spend a lot of this video talking about how it's played out in New York, where the congestion reduction zone has now been in effect for a bit over a year, but I think the lessons are more broadly applicable to things like pedestrianization and bike lane projects that you'll see in any city. So we'll go on a couple tangents today as well, because this is something I think about a lot in practically every city I go to. Like in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I think my verdict was that there is no central city anywhere in the US that should so obviously be pedestrianized, but it is so hard to break away from the status quo, especially for business owners who are used to being successful with things the way they've always been. Well, update, I went to Santa Fe a few months ago, and now there are streets closed to traffic that didn't used to be. Or hop the rail runner 60 miles southwest and get off in downtown Albuquerque. When I made a video about the city's bus rapid transit and the Central Avenue corridor, I didn't spend a lot of time covering the downtown section, which had its charms but seemed a bit underutilized. At one point, I actually had beers with councilperson Joaquin Baca, who represents the district that includes downtown. God knows why elected officials watch this channel, but apparently they do. And he floated the idea of putting bike lanes on Central. I thought, interesting idea, but there's no way that isn't going to get shot down. Well, when I visited Albuquerque last year, guess what? Bike lanes on Central, and the city finally got around to permitting dockless scooters, so now there's all kinds of traffic on downtown's Main Street. I got together with Councilor Baca again, and I talked to business owners whose places front Central Avenue downtown, and I got the same story from everyone. They hated the idea when they heard it, they hated the idea when it was in planning and design and construction, and then it opened and they were like, oh, well, this is actually pretty good. So let's talk a bit about this dynamic. The Stockholm congestion charge went live in 2007, right when I was starting my planning career. I was working at the Oregon DOT, and the Portland region was talking about congestion pricing, as it has been since at least the mid-90s, without actually doing much about it. While I was at ODOT, I sat in on a webinar about cordon schemes, and the Stockholm people shared basically this chart that showed public support rising from around 30% just before implementation to over 50% near the end of the initial 6-month trial period. And it was really striking to me. It just seemed to say so much about politics and voter attitudes. Someone in power has to decide that something is a good idea, even if the public isn't on board yet. Well, they made the trial permanent, and today the Stockholm congestion charge routinely polls at 70% plus support. Fast forward to last summer in Edmonton, Alberta, someone from Paths for People, the advocacy group that brought me up there, shared this graphic that I'd never seen before, the Hill of Hysteria. It's possible that this is UK and Commonwealth specific, and I'm just in a US bubble, but I found it very relatable. Similar to the Stockholm polling, it's the idea that when you propose a policy or project in the urban environment that challenges the status quo, you go through a phase of rising tension as people are gripped with uncertainty and worst-case scenario thinking. It peaks around implementation with complete hysteria, and then the madness abates as the change beds in, people get used to it, and they find that, for the most part, their fears were unfounded. And then you've got a new status quo. You know, I always learn something new in Canada. Okay, let's talk about New York. On January 5th, 2025, the MTA's congestion relief zone went into effect. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here explaining how it works. I left links down in the description, but it's a cordon system where drivers get charged for crossing into the zone, which is basically the island of Manhattan, below 60th Street. The base price is $9 with some exceptions. The idea of the CRZ is really twofold. One is right in the name, it's to relieve congestion in the busiest part of the city by reducing the number of vehicles entering, and two, to raise revenue to fund transit capital improvements. I'll talk about both of these aspects as we go through some of the year one results. Let's start with what I think is the most obvious thing a cordon pricing scheme is supposed to do: discourage people from driving into the CRZ. I'm going to share data from a variety of sources here, but the MTA itself does a pretty good job of documenting performance, including the first evaluation report published in January 2026. And the report shows that vehicle entries into the CRZ are down 11% compared to the historical baseline. Some of the bits I'm including here come from this report: Congestion Pricing 1 year later, which the Regional Plan Association produced in conjunction with the new Sam Schwartz Transportation Research Program at Hunter College. Foot traffic up about 5% inside the CRZ, and city bike trips up about 5% as well. Broadway gross revenues up 11% year over year, and storefront vacancy rates down within the CRZ. All good news, but you might ask, how is it possible that foot traffic and business are up when the volume of cars coming into the area are down? Well, let's look at what's happened with transit. Subway ridership into the CRZ up 9%, bus ridership up 8%, Long Island Railroad up 10%, and Metro North 7%. And you might say, well, none of those is as high as the 11% drop in vehicle entries into the CRZ, so that still doesn't add up. Well, actually, it more than adds up. Even prior to implementation, drivers only accounted for about 9% of New York City residents who commuted to work in Manhattan. Nearly 10 times as many take the subway. And even among non-New York City residents, only 21% were driving for their commute. To put it simply, 11% of a number that wasn't that significant in the first place is much smaller than like 9% of a much, much larger number. So if you want to know why foot traffic and business are up, this is a pretty good clue. Oh, also, crime on transit down 5.5%. Safety in numbers is a whole thing I'm gonna have to make a video about at some point. There are a truly incredible number of benefits to cutting vehicle entries by 11%. I'd be careful about attributing causation, but some of these seem like slam dunks. Serious injury crashes down 9%. Illegal parking complaints down 14%, network delay from traffic jams down 28%, which might seem disproportionate, but a couple of years ago I made a whole video about how traffic congestion is a nonlinear phenomenon, and how modest increases in traffic volume can have catastrophic effects on delay. Well, it works the other way too. Modest decreases in traffic volume can have outsized benefits. You see this in the 23% increase in vehicle speeds on crossings into the CRZ, and you see it in bus speeds, with some routes improving by as much as 25%, which has its own compound benefits. When buses don't get stuck in traffic, you can tighten up timetables, turn buses around faster, and increase frequency without even adding vehicles and drivers to the route. Also, taxis, 7.5% more productive. They can complete trips faster and serve more customers in a shift. Also, 70% drop in excessive honking reports, which, if you know New York, is a byproduct of gridlock. Again, it's these nonlinear effects where the CRZ really shines. Air quality. There hasn't been enough time for much peer-reviewed literature to show up, but we do have this paper from Nature's NPJ Clean Air Journal. This one's interesting since it acknowledges you can't always just depend on year-over-year changes because of all the possible intervening factors like wind conditions and dispersion. They estimated PM 2.5 pollution, basically fine airborne particles, down 22%. Again, nonlinear effects, that's a lot less traffic idling at blocked intersections. I encourage people to dig into the links I put down in the description. The benefits of reducing vehicles coming into the CRZ are kind of incredible and almost sell the project all by themselves. But we haven't even gotten to the revenue side. Year one, we're looking at about $500 million in new funding for the MTA, all for transit capital improvements. You may have recently seen Governor Hochul announce $25 million for planning and preliminary engineering on the 2nd Avenue subway extension along 125th. That isn't funded by the CRZ, but the tunnel boring from 96th up to 125th is among the projects enabled by congestion relief, as well as lots of signal system upgrades that'll improve reliability and station modernization projects. All told, the MTA and its creditors have seen enough to bond $1.75 billion in newly awarded projects. You guys, this is just year one. Hey, if you're the type of person who absorbs information more readily by just listening to smart people talk about things, well, first of all, what are you doing here? And second, might I recommend this episode of the excellent Volts podcast? David Roberts, the host, super smart, always asks great questions that get right to the heart of things. And this episode is an hour-long conversation with Kate Slevin, Executive Vice President of the Regional Plan Association, to break down a bit of the history of congestion pricing in New York City and everything that's gone down in the last year. And I haven't even gotten to the main thing that I wanted to talk about, which is, has there been a shift in public support? So stay tuned for that. Usual ways to show support and stay connected with the channel. I expect to be able to make an announcement soon on New York. You might hold April 24th on your calendar if you're interested. It did sell out pretty fast when I was in town last year, so consider joining the Patreon to get early notification of ticket availability and, fingers crossed, early access. Also, I can now announce Lexington, Kentucky, March 3rd. Keynote for the Fayette Alliance's Grow Smart Academy. Extremely reasonable price, but donate what you can. Really looking forward to it. Okay, now that we've seen actual data on what has changed below 60th Street in Manhattan in the last year, let's look at public response. Siena polled voters in December 2024, just before implementation, and found that only 32% favored the pricing scheme and 56% opposed it. I just want to say, as a governor, you have to be pretty convinced that your policy advisors are right and the public is wrong to even get past this point. Well, Siena came back in March, a couple months after the CRZ went into effect, and posed the question again. And the turnaround is pretty staggering. Just a couple months in, 42% support and only 35% opposition. Lots of people on the fence or just don't have an opinion. I mean, I assume there are a lot of New Yorkers from the other four boroughs who try to avoid Manhattan altogether. And here's another poll I want to share from the Partnership for New York City, a month after implementation. Similar findings, but they polled statewide, which kind of makes sense since it is the state that holds the MTA's purse strings. Across the state as a whole, only 27% support and 47% opposition, which seems bad. But among people who actually drive into the CRZ on a regular basis, it was 66 to 32 in support. Just sit with that for a minute. The people who pay the congestion charge, who you might imagine would be the most opposed, are actually some of the biggest supporters. And the people who are least supportive are people who live upstate or in the suburbs, never come to Manhattan, and just assume that it's a government cash grab with no benefits because, well, that's just what government does. Really cynical stuff, and I hope if you've watched this far, you just know better. Okay, this was sort of a video about New York, but sort of not, because I really think this question of how people worry about projects and policies before they happen, and the way they begin to appreciate their benefits and accept them as a new status quo is applicable well beyond congestion pricing. And that brings me to Pike Place Market in Seattle. In January 2024, I uploaded a video about the market, mostly to just pose the question, why does Pike Place, one of the most active pedestrian environments in the whole country, still allow car traffic and relegate pedestrians to narrow sidewalks where there's not nearly enough room? Well, fast forward to April 2025, the unthinkable happened. The Pike Place Market Preservation and Public Development Authority instituted a pilot project to severely limit vehicle access to Pike Place, in effect pedestrianizing the street during the market's most active hours while still allowing deliveries and loading during off hours. I came through a couple times this past August to really experience the difference firsthand, and it's pretty staggering. People who come to enjoy the market being able to use the whole street, It's kind of like going from pedestrian level of service F to LOS A. It's such a better experience, and basically everyone who spends money at the market is a pedestrian. So why would you ever go back? I even made a video with food wizard and friend of the channel, Kenji Lopez Alt, where we tried to help make the case for making the pilot permanent. And I believe it has been extended to at least the World Cup this summer, which is going to be bonkers at Pike Place, but no word on long-term plans yet. Like, I don't know how much more they need to see. Foot traffic up close to 10% year over year. I just say that if you've got the editorial board of a city's major newspaper on board, usually kind of a conservative group, it's probably already a home run. They do point out that some of the uptick could be attributed to the opening of the new Overlook Walk over Alaskan Way, connecting the market to the waterfront, and it is an awesome piece of urban design, but to me that's more reason to increase pedestrian capacity and improve the built environment, not less. As with all of these kinds of projects, it's the established businesses that are most skeptical about any change to the status quo. Even right in the heart of downtown, the most walkable, transit-rich part of the city, they still wonder, how will people get here? Well, not only is foot traffic up year over year, but retail sales at the market have been up year over year every month the pilot has been active. By the way, if you're in Seattle, follow Gordon on BlueSky. I guess my final thought on this is change is hard, and even if a decision maker is 100% convinced it's gonna be for the better, there's always resistance. And comparing metrics before and after is good, but you always have to put it into some kind of compelling narrative. That's kind of the whole MO of this channel, so I'm looking forward to a 2026 full of new videos, and hopefully full of political courage in all of our great cities. One takeaway I hope you're getting from today's video is people are not impervious to data. We really can improve our cities by telling better stories with better analytics. And that's where today's sponsor, TomTom, comes in. TomTom revolutionized the personal navigation space decades ago, and they continue to innovate with new products that leverage rich transportation and geolocation data. And today I want to highlight a new release, the 15th edition of the TomTom Traffic Index, which has become the benchmark for understanding congestion in cities worldwide. The Traffic Index ranks selected cities around the world by their average travel time and congestion level, and it provides free access to high-quality, useful information. It lets you pinpoint patterns anywhere in the world, from states to suburbs, counties to capital cities. It's up to you to draw the limits and your own conclusions. TomTom is the leading independent geolocation technology specialist, shaping mobility with highly accurate maps, navigation, real-time traffic information, and services. And the latest edition of their traffic index is based on a new product, Area Analytics. It's a tool that combines world-leading, on-ground traffic data with big-picture insights. After 15 years of producing the annual traffic index, TomTom realized customers across industries needed to understand what was driving congestion on their own streets and neighborhoods. They needed insights for areas beyond a few hundred cities, including smaller towns, specific districts, and the connections between them. Area Analytics provides a comprehensive view of traffic within any defined area, combining the breadth of regional trends with the depth of street-level insights. It transforms raw traffic data into actionable intelligence that answers not only basic questions like how congested is it, but what's causing it, where exactly is it happening, and what patterns should we address. You can use custom areas and time frames from city blocks to regions, analyze by time of day, and filter historical data going back to 2020. And you can download data in formats like CSV and JSON to integrate into your own systems and analytical processes. TomTom Area Analytics will help you develop the kinds of insights that will improve the way your transportation system operates today and how you plan it for the future. You can try it for 30 days for free by going to tomtom.com/CityNerd. Click the link down in the description or use the QR code right here on screen. Go check out the TomTom Traffic Index and try Area Analytics in the TomTom Move portal. Again, 30 days for free. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons and the Nebula subscribers who really keep this whole operation afloat. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode next week. and I'll see you then.